Looking for real stories that lift you up and light a fire inside? Welcome to Inspire and Impact, the podcast where purpose meets perseverance. This is where transformation begins and your story continues.
Welcome to the Inspire and Impact podcast interviews. I'm your host, Daniel Rosenstein. Today I have the honor of interviewing Danielle Bernock. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I love doing podcast interviews. Everyone is so unique.
Wonderful. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your background with the audience?
Oh, I'd love to. I'm Danielle Bernock. I live in Michigan in the United States. I've been married for 45 years, happily married. My husband's part of my healing journey. And I'm a childhood trauma survivor that has taken that pain and turned it into becoming an author, coach, and speaker. So I'm trauma-informed, self-love, and faith-based.
Wonderful. So what was your life like before your healing journey?
Very messed up. Very messed up. I called myself an emotional basket case when I was writing my first book because it's very visual. I didn't understand my emotions. My emotions ran my life, but I had no idea what was happening because they had been so injured by the trauma of growing up. So I was very messed up before my healing journey, emotionally, mentally, physically, because trauma makes people sick. I had various different issues going on in my body as well, and I was making all kinds of bad choices.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I mean, I'm a trauma survivor myself, so I know what it's like. It's pretty horrible, especially when it's in your younger years and you can't really control like what happens, just have to deal with it. So you kind of describe your trauma as being like invisible. How did you come to like recognize it in your life?
Well, the way I do it with my clients and people I work with is I have a trauma assessment that's free at my website. How you recognize trauma is by the side effects, which is what that means is how it presents in your life. Your behaviors, your thoughts, your feelings, and the things that you can identify that are trauma responses. Many times people think those trauma responses are just their own personality. Oh, well, I always do that, and it's just like this. And we tend to dismiss that. That's why it's so important to have this assessment to go, oh, really? That doesn't have to be that way? Because trauma is invisible. People don't know they have it a great deal of the time. Some people do know, but trauma can be hidden because we think that's just how I grew up. That's just the way it is. When I was in counseling, writing my first book and talking with my counselor, I was talking about something with her, trying to make a point, and she stopped me and asked me questions that I didn't know the answer to, and then went on to say something went terribly wrong. And I was shocked. I had no idea. And she unpacked for me a place in my childhood in a way that I had been traumatized that I was completely blind to. And so seeing that became the beginning of me being empowered to do something about that. Because if you don't notice it, it remains invisible and you can't do anything about it.
You also mentioned that like trauma is not like the person's fault. Why is that distinction so like important for people to understand?
Because it's not is the simple answer, because it's not their fault, and because trauma survivors always blame themselves, especially children, because children can't blame the person who has traumatized them because they're a child. And most of the time, if not always, the child looks at this other person as someone they need in their life. And so they look at this person and they can't make them be the villain because they need this person, especially if it's a parent or a teacher or some authority figure that is required to be in their life. They can't villainize them. So instead, they villainize themselves. So it's all their fault. And that's a natural response of human beings. Probably yourself has been through that. Whenever you've done something, found yourself in a place and things aren't going according to plan, the first person we tend to blame is ourself. And then sometimes we deflect and blame others, but that's a shame response. And it's crucial for a trauma survivor to know trauma is never their fault, because trauma is not what happened to you. Trauma is not the choice you made to be in that place or wore that outfit or go to that class or whatever, you might grab a hold of to be the reason that you're blaming yourself. That's not trauma. Trauma is the wound that is left behind inside of a person, and you can't see it unless they do brain scans. And everybody doesn't go and get brain scans. They can see trauma in a person's brain through a brain scan. And so it's crucial for a person to know that they are not the one to blame, because it's an injury. It's an involuntary injury. If you fall down and you scrape your knee, it's not your fault that your knee got scraped. You may have tripped, been clumsy, whatever, but the wound on your knee is not your fault. It's a side effect of what had happened. And trauma is a side effect of something that happens on the inside. And no one is impervious to trauma. People can prepare, they can grow in resilience, they can be trained, but no one is impervious. I like to illustrate that point with a gentleman named John Thurman, who I interviewed for my book, Because You Matter. I interviewed 10 different people telling their stories of what they had been through and how they took ownership of their life and got to live healthy again and restored. And John, if anyone would have been impervious to trauma, it would have been John. He was trauma trained. He had gone to a special high school where they built resilience and, you can do hard things and press you past your ability, where past where you want to quit, but you keep going anyways. He was in the service. I mean, all the things, if anyone was impervious, it would have been John. But he developed PTSD because of how his brother died. And that's not his fault. And it's crucial for people to not blame themselves. That's where they're at. And they have to validate, yes, I have trauma, and no, it's not my fault. But you are actually the only person who can do something about it to move forward, which is why I focus on empowering a person in their self, that only they can change their life. I love the quote by Carol Burnett: only I can change my life. No one can do it for me. So a person needs to know it's not their fault, because it gets rid of the shame that wants to crush them and they won't do anything about it. So shame has to be obliterated, has to be addressed. A bright light of grace and love and compassion has to shine on the heart to give them courage to move forward and to grab a hold of the healing. So it is crucial for them to know it is not their fault. It is never their fault. Never, 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 never.
So how does trauma impact people's lives, and if not aware of it, how can it be impacting them?
It impacts them because of the side effects. It impacts a person in how they perceive things. It impacts them in how they process things. We have lenses we see through, that we process information. We have mindsets that we develop. A mindset is a collection of thought processes they play like in the background. It's like something will happen and your brain will go through a whole bunch of thought processes, and then you'll find yourself in this other place. And if you don't slow that process down to see what happened in that, split second, you won't be aware of those thoughts progressions that you have gone through. That's how I got healed and addressed one of my traumas, was by sitting in a chair. When I got to a place, I had a trauma reaction. I got triggered, and I didn't want that to ever happen again. And I sat down in a chair and I prayed. I said, God, I'm not getting out of this chair until you help me. I want that to never happen again. And what he did is he helped me slow down what was happening, what happened in that time, that one particular time when I got triggered. What was I thinking? What was I feeling? What was going through my mind? And where did it end? What was the narrative that I was telling myself about myself without even knowing I was doing that? But you have to slow that down and you have to become aware of what's going on the inside. So we have to see that. That's what I did in that time. And I realized that the narrative I was telling myself in that particular time, that trigger sent me back to when I was 6 years old and something that happened to me at school, that I ended at the I had no value. I did not matter. It's like, so I was obliterating myself, and I had to address that wound and feed my inherent value. That's one of the things I focus on with what I do in my speaking, in my books, in my clients, my coaching, is building inherent value. You have value just because you exist. It isn't based on what you do and what you say. What we do and what we say affects us, but that is not the source of our value. We have value because God created us, and he created us with value.
So was there like a pivotal moment when you realized in your life you had to like, you know, make a paradigm shift? Like you didn't want to be have that trauma affect you like it was?
I had a pivotal moment when the direction of my life changed. I wasn't aware of the trauma at that time. I just knew I was really messed up and I needed some help. I was on a road trip that I write about in my first book, Emerging with Wings. It's a hilarious story. But on that road trip, I reconnected with God. Prior to that, I had had religious trauma and spiritual trauma, and I had thrown God away, got mad at him, tried to prove he didn't exist because I was so angry with him. But on that road trip, I reconnected with him. And so the direction of my life was changing from trying to destroy myself into finding hope and finding life again. So that was the beginning of that time. It was quite messy after that still, because I was entrenched in the trauma and clueless to just about all of it. But God came in and he brought things to me, people in my life. My husband is a big part of my healing journey. As I said at the beginning, he's chapter 3 in my first book. It was unconditional love that ushered in the healing into my life. That's why at my website, I say connecting people to the love that heals, because we need love. It is our greatest need. Scientists have studied it. They've done research in orphanages and with monkeys and all over the place. And, you probably heard the song that's, I don't know how old it is, looking for love in all the wrong places. But people do that all the time because we need love. And that's why I have gone on the internet as well and labeled myself as that lady on the internet who loves you, because we need love. Love is the answer. And it sounds very trite, and people can blow it off as, so love, you just let people do whatever they want. No, that's not love. That's why I have a free book at my website to give away called Love's Manifesto. It's what is love, why we don't believe it, and what it takes to convince us. So that's free at my website. People can get that. So, yes, love is the answer, but it's a lot more than just a 4-letter word.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that for a moment because you mentioned like an important question, like what is love? Like you're saying is like if I told myself I love myself, is that like really enough for me to say that, that in terms of having self-love, just by saying the words I love myself and that's it, I'm healed?
No, because words alone are not enough. Words can be said and be empty, which is sad, but it's true. We need to experience love. We need to see, feel, taste, touch, so to speak it. We need it to become a part of who we are. And to define love, my definition of love, other than the Bible tells me God is love, but that's also another big mysterious thing. How do you unpack that? But a way that it can be tangible to us is to love someone is to recognize they have value. They just have value. You're not measuring their value. They have value because they exist. And the second thing is, if you will love someone, is you will you will look at them and treat them in their best interest. You will behave toward them in their best interest. You won't let them do whatever they want because that's not always in their best interest. If you have a little kid and wants to run out in the street like little kids tend to do, but if you grab that kid and you don't let them run into the street and they're kicking and screaming and mad at you, you are protecting that child. You're acting in their best interest. So to love yourself is to see and recognize that you have value and to act in the best interest of yourself to the best of your ability. Because, you know, we're, we don't always do that well, but, we fall down and we get up again.
So I know you created like your own framework of healing, this trauma and love. It's called the Self Framework. What inspired you to create your own like method versus like using all these other, like you said, there's a lot of people that wrote books about trauma and healing and love.
Well, a number of reasons. When you asked many facets of that, so a number of reasons. Originally, it was just so I had something nice and neat because my healing journey is in my first book, Emerging with Wings, but in that book, it's telling a story. It's written like a love story with a hero, a villain, a person overcoming. So it's a story that inspires and builds hope and courage into a person to desire that same freedom that I received. And there's lots of things to grab in there to learn from, but it wasn't easy to follow modality. And we need easy. I mean, we need easy, especially when we're dealing with something hard like trauma. I was not aware of modalities out there when I was creating this. When I was going through my healing journey, I had trouble finding help. I didn't find psychology in the faith community, and I didn't find faith in the psychology community. And I believe we need both because we have a brain and we have a heart. We need both of them. So I created this to help people move forward and simplify it. It has to be simple. Things in the faith community, people can get all complicated with Christianese and all kinds of stuff like that, and people are just lost. The same thing in the psychological community about, this modality and that modality and all these psychological words like regulation and dysregulation and all the theories in that. And people give up because they get lost in all the jargon. So I'm a simplifier. I have to simplify because we need simple. So my modality is self, SELF. And it's self because that's where our choices reside, are in ourself. And like that quote I shared, only you can change your life. No one can do it for you. So like a quote we've heard before, the buck stops here. It has to start with ourself. If we're going to move forward, it's up to us to do something about it. You know, there's people in the faith community that say you just pray and it'll go away. Well, it's not that simple. Following Jesus isn't magical. It's a relationship, and we need to have a relationship with ourself. And the second reason I came up with that word self is because people in the faith community, some of them have a hard time with that. And that was part of my trauma. So I reclaimed that because Jesus came to save ourselves and to reconnect ourselves with him so we could exist in relationship because we were created for relationships. We need relationships, all of us. We had that other quote, no man is an island. People try to be that way, but it's not healthy. We need relationships. So I created that self method, which stands for see, expose, love, and free. And the C is all about awareness. As we said earlier about why does someone need to not blame themselves? Why do they need to see that? Well, if you can't see it, it remains invisible and then you can't do anything about it. And then it is given permission to control your life. It is in control instead of yourself. So first we have to see it. And after that, we have to expose, well, why is it there? It's like oftentimes people will shove that trauma under the rug because they don't want to deal with it. It's unpleasant. It's back there. Leave it in the past. Well, you shove enough stuff under the rug, you're going to be tripping over your rug because there's lots of bumps in the rug. So you have to lift up the rug and go, that's why. Oh, but then the L is a crucial pivotal part of the process. L stands for love. That's where you have to take love into yourself. You have to get the love you need. You have to take a step toward loving yourself, comforting yourself, and getting the courage to go to the next step. Because without that, you're going to see, you're going to expose, and you're going to hop into bed and stay there forever. So we need the L to get comfort and courage to do the F, which is free, which is the action step, to take action, to do just one thing at a time, to take action. And then you do the cycle again. You see, well, how did that affect me? How did that, how good was that? How helpful was that? And then expose, well, why? Why was it helpful? Why was it that helpful? Why wasn't it as helpful as I thought? And then love yourself to do it. And you do the cycle over and over and over again, because healing of trauma takes work and it takes courage and it takes time. So you have to go through it over and over again, but it's simple. One thing at a time. See, expose, love and free, repeat.
So how does I mean, that sounds pretty incredible that you came up with that. I mean, I like it a lot, and I love that acronym itself because it makes so much sense. I also love the fact that you make it so simple, because you said you're absolutely right. It seems like these days some of the things are so complicated. As a trauma survivor myself, I understand that, like, when you've been through a lot of trauma, you can't handle anything that's too complicated or too burdensome, because you're already dealing with a lot, just trying to process the trauma. So we need something that's really simple to help us heal. I mean, for this self process, is it something that people can do themselves by reading your books, or do you have to see like a practitioner like yourself to walk them through and guide them through the process?
That depends on them. My book, Emerging with Wings, does not contain the self process. I developed it after. I didn't write about it in Because You Matter because I was focused on the people's story, and I really developed the self method after that as well. A person, if they understand and are capable, some people are, can go through the self themselves if they understand what I said, because some people are, they can do that. I encourage people to do whatever's going to work for them. That's my biggest push, is do what works for you, because there's not just one thing that works for everybody. And I am the only one who does the self process, so you can't go somewhere else to do that. But if you wanted to do it with someone, I encourage people who are going through that, wherever you go, go with someone. Don't do it alone, because we need relationship. Do it with a friend, do it with a counselor if you need to focus on the past. I'm a coach, not a counselor. A counselor can focus more on the past. They have methodologies like EMDR and all kinds of things like that. I do not. I am a coach. It is forward focused to help you move forward. When you're driving a car down the road, you do use your rear view mirror and your side mirrors. So you do glance behind you. So when I'm coaching, we do reference the past. We just don't sit in it. So whatever a person needs, I encourage people at the beginning, if they're timid, as I said, you need courage to address this. Sometimes they're too timid to connect with the person immediately. That's when I invite them to, buy my book and read it. And then you'll get to know me a little bit. Go to my website, daniellebernock.com. I have a tab of free resources, a whole bunch of free things that you can take into you for free to help yourself. And maybe that's all you need. Or then maybe you get to know me and you're like, oh, I want to work with her. But I give you these things free so that you can taste, because trust is crucial. So that's why I put all that stuff out there and encourage people, do what works for you. And if I don't work for you, find someone who does. But please don't stay in your trauma. Please move forward, because you matter and I love you.
That's wonderful. Can I ask you, like, what do you think is like a misconception that people have when it comes to like emotional trauma and healing?
Misconception of emotional trauma is people think that a lot of what happened to them isn't trauma, because people don't understand that trauma is that wound. They look at it as what happened to them, but it's not, because what happened to you happened outside of you, whereas trauma happens inside of you. And people tend to dismiss emotional trauma. They make it less in their understanding because they can't see it. We tend to dismiss things we can't see. We're visual people. It's just human to be that way. And I have become aware of therapists and other people who have had physical trauma and emotional trauma, and they have been grateful for the physical trauma because they could see it. And they recognized that because they could see it, that helped them to validate the truth of it. It's harder to validate something that you cannot see, which is why it's important to see the side effects. That assessment that I have has 30 questions, 30 different side effects a person could manifest. So in my assessment, there's the results are four different categories of where you tend to fall, which is aligned with the SELF. If you're in the one end, then you have a lot to work on. If you're in the other end, you've probably dealt with a lot already. So there's a spectrum of kind of where you find yourself in that. But to validate the trauma, it has to be validated to be able to move forward. There's a quote in my first book that went viral that speaks to that whole validation. People need to see that trauma is personal. You have to validate it. You have to see it. You have to address it. Otherwise, healing is not going to begin.
So, what advice do you give to people that they feel the trauma is so bad they don't even want to look at it because it's so painful and they're afraid it's going to be re-trigger them again? Like they can't want to bring up the emotions or anything like that.
Mhm.
What advice could you give to people like that? Because actually, I was talking to a woman the other day because I'm a life coach too. And I said, hey, I can offer some type of healing work, but she was like too afraid. She's like, oh, I don't want to even look at it.
I have encountered people like that. And if a person is unwilling, there's really nothing you can do for them because they have to make the choice. The way I attempt to coax them out of that, but does not always work because some people are hardline. No, I'm not dealing with it. Well, that's their choice they're making, and I will respect their choice. But the word I like to use is I dare you. I dare you to believe that you are worth the work. I dare you to believe that you have value and you can have a better life. That word dare is one that coaxes. Because when you tell someone you need to do that, the reaction in humanity is, don't you tell me what to do. But when you tell someone, I dare you, like imagine you dare a little kid, I dare you to eat that worm. What are they going to do? They're going to go eat the worm. It's crazy. So I dare people to believe that they are worth it, that life could be better, that it'd be worth the pain to go through it. But ultimately, it rests upon them. They have to dare to believe. They have to dare to take the step. Can't do it for them.
So let's talk about like your books now, if that's okay with you. You mentioned you wrote your book, Emerging with Wings. What was it like to write such a raw personal story? I mean, what compelled you to even write the book in the first place? Because some people they like to keep their stuff private. Why did you feel the need to say, "Hey, okay, I'm going to put this out there for everybody to see"?
That's a good question. I Years earlier, I thought of writing a book because I had grown a lot and I wanted to help people. So it was just a mild, I want to help people. It's good to want to help people, right? But I shelved it because I didn't know how to do that and life was still lifing. So was still raising my kids and doing things like that. But then there came a time one morning in my prayer time, I was doing a devotional and I had gone through more healing at that point. I felt compelled by the Lord God to write a book. And so it was I decided that day to start writing a book, but I didn't know how, so I began research into doing that. Decided that it would probably be smart to hire a counselor because I would be revisiting things, which proved to be way more smart than I thought because she uncovered more trauma in me than I was aware of before I started writing the book. I started writing the book with what I knew, But then I added in there all the things that I came to know while I was in counseling. So releasing that book was terrifying. Was terrifying to release that to the world, but I didn't write it in a way that's graphic. I didn't write it in a way that would trigger people, I believe. I say that because I have read books that I have felt I wish I could unread that. I don't believe there's anything in my book that people will wish to unread. I don't think that's healthy. I think it's more healthy to tell a story and to encourage people to move along. And that's how I wrote that first book, is like a love story. As I said, there's a hero, a villain, and a person overcoming, and it emerges happy at the end. So it was terrifying to release it. It was hard to write it. I'm glad I was in counseling, and it took a year and a half. And it transformed my life to write the book. I even did a speech at a writers conference about that. People know that if you read a book, it transforms your life. But if you write a book, it will transform your life as well. As you write it, it will change you.
So you also wrote the book Because You Matter. What message do you hope like readers will get after like reading it?
Well, the subtitle of Because You Matter is How to Take Ownership of Your Life So You Can Really Live. And it focuses on instilling value into the person, like take ownership of your value, take ownership of your courage, take ownership of your emotions, your mind. It's all the different aspects of your life to take ownership of. And at the beginning, part of this came out of an epiphany I got from one of my writer friends. She did a blog post or a social media post or something on ownership. And I had never understood ownership the way she explained it until she did. And in the beginning of my book, Because You Matter, I unpack the difference between responsibility and ownership. And I also deal with the problem of ownership from a faith-based perspective, because there's people out there that have an issue with that. So I hope to bring clarity to people of what does it mean to really take ownership of your life, why that is a good thing, and then all the different parts of your life you can take ownership of, and then illustrated it with 10 different stories of men and women, different ages and races and ways of believing of how they did that and what it actually looked like. So I hope that that will fuel people with I matter and courage to, yeah, I want to take ownership of my life. I want to live a better life.
Now you mentioned like a big part of your healing journey as well as your healing method is like incorporating faith. But what about people who are like atheists or agnostic? Like, they have trouble believing that there is a God, or they may believe there's a God, but that, there's a lot of doubt. Can they heal as well without the faith aspect, or is it going to be much more difficult without having that faith component?
Well, to be honest, I am biased because I do believe in Jesus, so I will come from that area. That's just the truth. But I respect people who believe whatever they believe, but it is crucial for people to know everybody believes something. Even an atheist believes something. They believe there is no God. They believe something. Everyone has faith in their life. Faith is expecting things. It's, when you sit on a chair, you expect it to hold you up. Faith is a part of life. And so it's important for people to know you have faith. It's just, where is your faith? Where is your faith? Where are you putting your faith? Because everybody has it somewhere. And coming from where I come from, I have faith in God, but I have faith in myself because of him. So I was raised in Christian circles that you shouldn't believe in yourself, but I don't believe that. I believe you need to believe in yourself. I just believe in God more than I believe in myself. I believe two are better than one. Just like a threefold cord is not easily broken, two is better than one. But everyone has faith in something. I believe it's better and easier because that's where I come from. So why wouldn't I believe that?
Oh, thank you. It's a very good explanation. I like the fact that you're open to working with different people that that have different beliefs and stuff, and I like how you say it's all about having faith in yourself and faith in like that the universe can provide you a way to heal. And that's what, like, I guess what part of what your book is, because you matter. Like, if I believe that I really matter, then I deserve to, be able to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crucial to understand that to internalize your own value is powerful. So many people are walking around feeling worthless and feeling not enough. And yeah, we need to know that we matter. Everybody matters. Everybody.
So I saw, like, behind you, you have the book, talking about your value. And what saw on your website, you wrote it with your grandson. What was that experience like?
Oh, it was delightful. That whole book came out of my grandson's artistic abilities. He was showing me his artwork. He had pages and pages of tacos. They were singing and dancing and being mechanics and nurses and from Mexico and from Russia and different places. And they were just delightful. And they were all very happy. But then on one page, there was one burrito, and that one burrito was upset. And I said to Gideon, Gideon, why is that burrito upset? He said, he's upset because he's not a taco. My heart broke. I had recently, at that point, been moving forward to try and mitigate the statistic that the second leading cause of death in children aged 10 to 14 is suicide. So when he said that, I said to him, we need to do something with this. We need to do a book of some sort with this. And so we talked about it, brainstormed of how to do something with this. And it ended up as an activity book, Tackle About Your Value, fun to feed your self-esteem. It's got over 100 different activities to feed self-esteem and to talk about it with kids. There's coloring pages and mazes and word searches and stories. And Gary is the main character. He's the taco. He loves everybody. He's an extrovert and he makes friends everywhere he goes and instills value into them. His sidekick is Mr. Squibbles. Mr. Squibbles is a cat burrito. And Mr. Squibbles met Gary and he felt he didn't have any value because he wasn't a taco. But Gary said, no, you have value just because you exist. And so now they're best friends and they travel the galaxy making friends and instilling value into people. So this activity book is to help kids talk about their value and other things. At that age, they start to feel awkward and start to wrestle with a sense of belonging. And so it's created for that age bracket, but little kids like the coloring pages and adults also like the puzzles. So it's a lot of fun to just instill value in people. So I mentioned that Gary and Mr. Scobles are best friends now. After after Mr. Scribbles met Gary, Gary put value into Mr. Scribbles because he felt like he didn't have any value because he was not a taco. But Gary's like, no, you have value just because you exist. And now they're best friends and they travel the galaxy making friends and instilling value into others.
So when it comes to, like, your coaching, who are the type of people you love to work with?
People who are ready.
That's a great answer.
People who are ready. People will come there. Maybe they want to do it. Maybe they aren't sure. But people who are ready, they're like, I am ready for change. I am ready to move forward. They're willing to do the work. They're going to show up and do it because they're hungry for the healing.
So what is a typical, like, coaching session with you like?
I ask questions and they answer. We have conversation. It's very personal. Everything is done on Zoom. I want my clients to feel safe. I esteem their privacy and their safety highly. So everything is very personal to them. I don't have standard questions I ask everyone. I follow the modality of seek, expose, love, and free, but I don't go see, expose, love, free. I don't do it canned like that. It's more like seeing where they're at. Where do they need to start? They have to start somewhere. We find a starting place and then we start unpacking it. And I let them talk. And it's like if you've ever done journaling, when you do journaling, you discover things about yourself. Things start coming out in writing. And you're like, oh, I didn't know I felt that. It happens that way in coaching as well. As you start talking, like, wow, I didn't know I felt that way. Or I ask a question about something they didn't recognize, like my helper did to me that one time. Wait, stop. Why? I did that with one of my clients recently. She had a reaction, a specific type of reaction to things. And I asked her, why do you do that? And she went, huh, I didn't even know I was doing that. And so then we moved forward to unpack that. And she found a whole new lane to move into to bring healing where she didn't even know it needed to be.
Ah, it's amazing. That's wonderful. So, what makes self love such a big foundation for healing? Like, why is it so important?
Back to the whole self, because if love is like fertilizer, it will in, cause growth. Cause growth. So if you love yourself is going to cooperate with yourself. If you treat yourself with loving compassion, you're not going to find yourself fighting with yourself. We have a relationship with ourselves. People don't tend to think of it that way, but we do. How do you treat yourself? How do you think about yourself? How do you talk to yourself? So if you have self love, that's how you think about yourself, seeing that value. But we need to have self-compassion, which is how we treat ourselves. We need to give ourselves grace and courage and give ourselves a break when we do something wrong and encourage ourselves to make change. It's how we treat ourselves. We won't do anything without love. We need that love. So it starts with us and then we can move forward. Then that fuels into other people. As the Bible said, Jesus said, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, everybody's your neighbor. But I quote it that way because someone might have an issue with we need to love others. Well, others, neighbor, whatever. Love others as yourself. It starts with yourself. If you don't love yourself, you're not going to love others well because it comes out of who you are. You can only give what you have.
So, as part of like your coaching, you offer different workshops like calming yourself and loving yourself. Can you explain to us, like in the audience, what are your workshops about? How do they help people?
Well, I have a trilogy of them that I offer. One is mental health as a result of trauma, and that unpacks how those are connected, the different kinds of trauma, because trauma is the one of the three causes of mental health problems. People don't know that. Trauma is a cause of mental health problems. So if a person has mental health problems, becoming trauma informed could mitigate their mental health problems, or in some cases, it can get rid of their mental health problems if trauma is the source of it. I'm not a medical professional, and so I'm not magic to anybody, but when someone deals with what's going on inside them, it affects the outside of them. It affects how they think. So I unpack the different kinds of trauma, how it affects you, go through the assessment, how to love yourself, and actions that you can do through mind management and growing resilience and self care. And then another one is emotional skills for turbulent times, which is about identifying the different kinds of chaos in life. There's 7 different kinds of chaos that we deal with in life. What are these things and how do we deal with them? Well, we deal with each 7 of them differently because they are different. But if we don't use the proper tools for the proper kind of chaos, we won't get the results we're looking for. Just like if you try to hammer in a nail using a screwdriver, it's not going to work as well as using a hammer. So having the proper tools is important. And I teach grounding methods and other skills to address those 7 different kinds of chaos. And the other one is relationship repair starts with you. We have to repair our relationship with ourselves. If we have anger issues in our relationships, we have estrangements going on, marriage issues, parents and children are estranged from one another, or you have problems at work, you don't play nice with your coworkers. Those are all relationship issues, but the buck stops here. You have to start with yourself and then you address the other relationships in your life. And I unpack why that matters so much, what is self-love, and why it's good and how it affects all the other things in your life.
And you also mentioned to me before that you do a lot of like public speaking. Do you have any like memorable stories you'd like to share with us about like was there any like particular interesting story you had with your any of your speaking engagements?
Ah, I love doing public speaking. So I'm like, oh, I loved all of them. What would I say? There's something I could share. In one of them, I had prayed because it was for a faith-based community to share it with. And I felt the Lord led me to reread my book before I was going to be doing the speaking gig. So I did that. And as I prepared for the time, I do an outline and I do a lot of preparation because I take serving who I'm speaking to seriously. I want to show up completely for them. But I was having trouble finding notes and getting something tangible to prepare for that speaking gig. And so I pray, I'm like, God, can you give me just one page of notes? I don't even have to use them, but can you give me something to hold on to? And he did, and I didn't use them. And he spoke through me that day, and it was just what the ladies needed to hear because it was for a group of ladies, and it was amazing. I had different things on my paper, different scriptures or quotes and things like that, songs and that. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, there were other speakers and there were people who did music there, and all those other people did the other things I had crossed off of my list to not do. And so how that came full circle like that was just beautiful. It was very enjoyable and it was just a beautiful experience.
Oh, thank you for sharing. That's really wonderful. So Danielle, if somebody had any questions from our conversation today or they're interested in working with you, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Through my website, daniellebernock.com, DanielleBernock.com. I have all my socials are connected there, my coaching, my resources, free resources, other resources, courses. There's a contact form on there to reach out to me. My address, phone number, and email is all there. Everything is on my website.
Oh, Danielle, do you have any final words you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up our conversation today?
Sure. I would like to say, I want to dare you to believe how much you matter. I want to tell you I love you because you matter. And I want to dare you to love yourself. And if you need any help with that, I invite you to connect with me. I am that lady on the internet who loves you. So until next time, bye.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle, again for coming on the show and sharing also about your experiences and all your teachings and knowledge. And I really love the fact that you incorporate faith, because I think that's important into your healing work and the different components. And you're absolutely right, because everything starts with ourselves. So I truly believe in what you're saying. So I was very happy that you came on to share this with the audience, because I think the audience can get a lot out of this. So thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.